April 11, 1981, a quiet mountain community in Northern California was about to become the site of something truly horrific. Keddie wasn't really a town. It was just a cluster of weathered cabins tucked away under pines, so thick they practically blocked out the sky. Once the sun went down in those woods, the darkness was absolute. There were no streetlights, no traffic, and no neighbors within earshot, just the sound of the wind in the trees and whatever else was moving around out there in the timber. Back then, nobody bothered with deadbolts. You just didn't think you had to. Inside cabin 28, Sue Sharp was settling in for the night. It was a full house. Several of her children were home, along with her son John's friend, Dana, who was staying over. By midnight, there were 7 people inside the cabin, all drifting off into what should have been a safe mountain sleep. But as the house went silent, the forest didn't. Sometime in the small hours of the morning, the stillness of cabin 28 changed. There was no forced entry, no shattered glass or kicked-in doors. Whoever it was simply stepped inside, moving through the dark like they'd been there before. 7 people went to sleep that night, unaware that they were no longer alone. But as the sun began to rise over the pines, the true horror of the night was revealed. While some in the cabin remained tucked in their beds, 3 would never wake up again. Sue, her son John, and his friend Dana. The most disturbing part, neighbors never heard a thing. The living room of cabin 28 felt like it was frozen in time. It wasn't just the mess. It was the kind of violent, senseless disorder that tells a story without ever fully explaining it. By the morning of April 12th, the quiet was gone. Sue Sharp was found on the floor, her son John and his friend Dana lying nearby. But what truly chills investigators to this day wasn't just the blood, it was the restraint. All 3 had been bound with tape, wire, and cords. This wasn't a random, heat-of-the-moment outburst. It was controlled. It was planned. And it was almost certainly the work of more than one person. The end didn't come quickly for them either. It was a chaotic, deeply personal struggle, a mix of heavy blows and stabbings that must have lasted far longer than anyone wants to imagine. But the most haunting part of the entire night, just a few feet away, behind a closed bedroom door, Sue's other sons, Rick and Greg, along with their friend Justin, were still there. They were alive, untouched. They would later tell police they didn't hear anything that night, or at least nothing they could understand. Somehow, in that tiny cabin, a nightmare unfolded just inches from where 3 children were sleeping, and they never even knew it. But as the police processed the grisly scene in the living room, they realized something even more disturbing. Someone was missing. Tina Sharp, Sue's 12-year-old daughter, wasn't among the victims. At first, there was a flicker of hope. Maybe she'd managed to run. Maybe she was hiding in the thick timber outside. But that hope disappeared almost instantly. Tina hadn't escaped. She had been taken. The search spread outward from cabin 28, moving deep into the suffocating darkness of the Keddie woods, but they found nothing. No footprints, no struggle, no trace. It was as if she had simply evaporated into the blackness beyond the trees. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. The town of Keddie tried to move on, but the silence where Tina used to be was deafening. It wasn't until 1984, 3 full years later, that discovery was made in a remote wooded area miles away. It was Tina. By then, the trail wasn't just cold, it was frozen. The exact details of her final moments were never fully recovered, leaving only the chilling realization that for Tina, the nightmare didn't end in the cabin. It was only just beginning. The investigation didn't exactly fail. It just unraveled, slowly, quietly. The days following the murders, there were already signs that something was wrong. Evidence wasn't handled correctly. The The crime scene wasn't fully secured. Important items were overlooked, and over time, evidence simply vanished. Leads came in and names surfaced, but nothing ever seemed to stick. This is where the theories begin. For many, this never felt like a case with no answers. It felt like a case where the answers were right in front of them, and they were either missed or ignored. One of the most unsettling theories centers on people who already knew the family. This didn't look like a random attack by a stranger passing through. The way the intruders moved through the house, the way they used specific bindings to control the victims, it all pointed to someone who knew the layout of cabin 28. Someone who knew exactly who was sleeping in which room. As the years passed, the investigation began to circle back to a few specific names. These weren't strangers passing through or boogeymen from the woods. They were men who lived in Keddie, men who knew the Sharps. One of the names that appeared again and again in police notes was John Beau Baubet. He lived in the area and was known for a history of unpredictable behavior. He had drifted into the family's social circle casually, and investigators brought him in for questioning multiple times. Each time, he answered, evaded, or gave conflicting details, but nothing concrete could be pinned on him. No witness could place him inside the cabin. No physical evidence tied him to the murders. And so, every time, he walked out the door. Then there was Ray McCrea. In a small town like Keddie, everyone has a reputation, and Ray's was built on aggression and local crime. Some investigators whispered that he might have been involved in the string of burglaries hitting the area, and that cabin 28 might have just been another target that went horribly wrong. Other names floated through the local rumors for decades. Neighbors with old grudges, transient workers staying in nearby cabins, and men from the logging camps who knew the layout of the community by heart. What makes this truly haunting isn't that the killers were invisible. It's that they were likely part of the scenery. They knew the routines. They knew which doors were left unlocked. And they knew exactly when the woods would be dark enough to cover their tracks. These names still resurface today in books and late-night documentaries, each time bringing back the same chilling question. Was the truth always hiding in plain sight? Was the killer someone who stood in the same grocery line as the victims? Someone who watched the search parties from their own front porch? In Keddie, the trail didn't just go cold. It was buried under the weight of secrets that were simply too close to home to ever bring to justice.